The White Snake is a kind of story that's bears certain similarities to the kind of work I've done a lot of. That is to say, originally it's an oral tale, it's a very old tale, its sources are obscure, and it's come to take its form in various literary genres and through various authors, but the story itself predates any of those forms. And it's a common event in Chinese folklore and legend, myth. It's about a man who unwittingly marries a snake spirit disguised as a beautiful young woman. And this snake spirit has been living on a mountain, becoming enlightened through her study of scripture. And she comes down the mountain to spend one day on earth to find out what people are like, what it's like to be a person. And she runs into a very handsome young man on a visit to a lake, and they share a boat ride across the lake, and she becomes very entranced by him, and they have a quick romance and a marriage. But this is not a happy event to a religious figure, a monk, a sort of fundamentalist monk who disapproves strongly of anyone marrying a different species. And so he's always forever trying to break them up and try to convince the husband that he's married to a snake, but the husband doesn't really believe him. And it's a very adventurous and very romantic story. And at the same time, it's sort of domestic. They run a pharmacy, they live in town, they try to have a normal life. The story has undergone so many changes, and even as you track it through history, the White Snake herself, Madame White Snake, is sometimes a much more positive figure and sometimes a much more negative figure. And that all has to do with the rise and fall of various religious beliefs and customs and tenets through history, which I'm not yet an expert, but I have done a little research into it. There are various different endings to the story, some more tragic than others. The lovers are separated. She ends up trapped under a pagoda as a kind of punishment for thousands of years, and then is released in certain versions. In other versions, she's released by her son, who's the progeny of her and her human husband. And she is restored to her more heavenly place. So it has various different endings. And I've thought about staging several of them and sort of commenting on that in the staging of it, but I'm not sure I'll do that. It is a story of star-crossed lovers and also predestined lovers, much like Romeo and Juliet, which is also on the season, and I have called it Romeo and Julie Snake, in that they're a young couple in love, but there are injunctions against them being together. And I mean, for the White Snake, those are a little bit more reasonable because she is a sort of demon spirit. But she's a harmless one and very much in love with her husband in most versions. In some, she's quite cunning and perhaps demonic, but I tend more towards seeing the legitimate romance of it, and that love in this case has transcended the physical bodies of the two, the physical beings, and the husband finds himself in love with something or someone that he shouldn't. But there's no harm in it for anyone else. At least until someone tries to separate them, then it all becomes quite dangerous because she starts to use her magic powers and they get kind of uncontrolled, and she ends up flooding a village and being very destructive, actually.